In the heart of Cameroon, there is a place that looks like paradise. Green rolling hills, lush valleys, and at the center of it all, a lake, Lake Nyos. It sits inside the crater of an old volcano. The water was always a deep, brilliant blue. It looked like a giant sapphire dropped into the mountains. The people of the Nyos village lived right on the edge. They were farmers. They were cattle herders. They believed the lake was a gift. It provided water. It provided life. But they didn't know what was hiding at the bottom. 200 meters down, in the darkness where the light never reaches, the earth was leaking. For hundreds of years, carbon dioxide had been seeping from the volcano's core. It didn't bubble up. It didn't escape. Because the water was so deep, the pressure kept the gas trapped. Like a giant bottle of soda that hasn't been opened yet. The lake was holding its breath, waiting for something to change. Waiting for a reason to let go. And on the night of August 21st, 1986, the bottle was finally opened. Eating their last meal of the day, the children were tucked into their beds. It was a normal Thursday night. Until 9 o'clock, a low rumble started deep inside the earth. It wasn't an earthquake. The ground didn't shake, but the lake began to groan. Suddenly, a massive pillar of water shot into the air, 300 feet high. The sapphire blue water turned a muddy red, and then the gas arrived. A giant cloud of white mist rose from the surface. It looked like a ghost, a heavy, thick, cold ghost of fog. It didn't float up into the sky. It was too heavy for that. It began to crawl. It flowed over the edge of the crater. Like a waterfall of invisible death, it poured down the slopes, moving at 50 miles per hour, heading straight for the sleeping villages. The people heard the rumble. Some stepped out onto their porches. They smelled something strange, like rotten eggs or gunpowder. They looked up into the darkness. They saw the white wall coming. But they didn't run, because you can't run from the air you breathe. White cloud hit the first village. Cha. It was a small cluster of homes. People were asleep in their beds. Others were sitting around their kitchen tables. The gas didn't explode. It didn't burn. It was cold. And it was 50 times heavier than the air. It pushed the oxygen out of the way. Like a giant hand pressing down on the valley. It flowed into the open windows. It crawled under the doors. It filled every room from the floor up. In the first house, a man was drinking a glass of water. He took a sip. He felt a sudden chill. Then, his lungs stopped working. He didn't cough. He didn't struggle. He just slumped forward. The glass stayed in his hand. He didn't even spill a drop. He looked like he was just taking a nap. But he was gone. Across the street, the cattle in the fields began to fall. One by one, hundreds of cows. They just folded their legs and hit the grass. The birds fell from the trees. The insects fell from the walls. Everything that needed to breathe was being silenced by the lake. The ghost of Nyos was claimed its first victims, and it was moving to the next village. By 10 o'clock, the cloud had reached the largest village, Nyos. 1,200 people were living there. The gas was now a thick blanket, 50 meters deep. It covered the entire valley. Inside the houses, the candles started to flicker. Then, they went out. Fire needs oxygen to burn, and there was no oxygen left. The people woke up for a split second. They felt dizzy. They felt confused. They tried to call out to their families, but their voices wouldn't come. Their throats were paralyzed. Some tried to run to the door. They only made it 2 steps before they collapsed on the floor. It was a mass execution, conducted by the air itself. The village became a museum of wax figures. A mother was holding her baby. A father was reaching for his shoes. 2 brothers were lying in the same bed. They looked peaceful. Their skin was perfect. There were no marks, no blood, no signs of a struggle. The only thing missing was the sound of a heartbeat. The cloud stayed for hours. It sat in the valley like a heavy lake of death, waiting for the sun to come up, waiting for the world to see what happens when a mountain decides to exhale. August 22nd, 6 a.m. The sun began to climb over the volcanic rim. The white cloud was gone. It had evaporated into the morning heat. Everything looked normal. The houses were still standing. The trees were still green. The laundry was still hanging on the lines. But there was no sound. None. In a village of 1,200 people, there should be the sound of roosters. There should be the sound of sweeping brooms. There should be the sound of wood being chopped for breakfast. Instead, there was a heavy, suffocating silence. Ephraim Abi opened his eyes. He was lying on his back. He felt like he had been hit by a truck. His head was spinning. His throat felt like it was filled with sand. He tried to sit up, but his legs were heavy, like lead. He looked around his room. His wife was lying next to him. She looked like she was in a deep sleep. He touched her shoulder. "Wake up," he whispered. She didn't move. He shook her. "Wake up!" She was cold. He looked at his children. They were still, too still. He stumbled out of his front door, hoping to find help, hoping to find anyone. But when he stepped onto the dirt road, he fell to his knees. Every neighbor, every friend, every animal was lying exactly where they had been standing the night before. The entire village had become a graveyard. Ephraim walked through the streets of Nyos. He was a ghost walking among the dead. He saw a man leaning against a tree, dead. He saw a group of children huddled together near a well, dead. There were no wounds, no blood, just the look of total surprise on their faces. He looked toward the lake. The sapphire blue water he had known his whole life was gone. In its place was a dark, angry, rusty red. The lake had turned the color of blood. The eruption had stirred up the iron from the bottom. It looks like the earth itself was bleeding. Thousands of cattle were rotting in the sun. But there were no flies. Even the insects had been wiped out by the gas. The birds had fallen from the sky mid-flight. They were scattered across the ground like autumn leaves. By noon, the first rescuers arrived. They were wearing gas masks. They were prepared for a fire. They were prepared for a volcano. But they weren't prepared for this. They walked into homes where families were still sitting at the dinner table, spoons in their hands, food on their plates, frozen in time. One of the rescuers later said, "It was like the world just stopped." 1,746 people had died in a single breath, and the monster that killed them was still sitting right there, quiet, deep, and red. The world was in shock. Scientists from every continent flew to Cameroon. They expected to find a volcano. They expected to find lava. But there was nothing. The houses were perfect. The trees were standing. The air was now clean. So, what had killed 1,700 people in their sleep? The answer was hiding at the bottom of the lake. Lake Nyos is not like other lakes. It is a limnic lake. It sits on a pipe of magma. Carbon dioxide from the Earth's core leaks into the water. In a normal lake, the gas bubbles to the top and escapes. But Nyos is very deep, and the water at the bottom is very cold. The weight of the water acted like a giant lid. For hundreds of years, the lake was absorbing the gas, until it couldn't hold any more. Something triggered it. Maybe a small landslide. Maybe a tiny tremor. But on that night, the lid came off. The bottom water rushed to the top, and the gas exploded. 1.6 million tons of CO2 shot into the atmosphere in seconds. It was a lake eruption, a phenomenon so rare that most scientists didn't even believe it was possible until they saw the bodies in Nyos. Today, Lake Nyos is a different place. The government forced everyone to leave. The villages are now ghost towns, overgrown by the jungle. If you visit the shore today, you will see something strange. A massive plastic pipe, stretching from the surface, down into the dark heart of the water. It is a fountain. It constantly sprays water into the air. This is the degassing system. It lets the CO2 out, a little bit at a time, so the bottle never explodes again. But the scientists are worried. The magma pipe is still there. The earth is still leaking. And there is another lake nearby, Lake Nyos. It is also full of gas. It is also a ticking time bomb. Nature is often loud when it kills. It uses fire. It uses wind. It uses water. But in the hills of Cameroon, the people learned a much darker lesson. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing in the world is the thing you cannot see, the thing you cannot smell, and the thing that waits for you while you are fast asleep. I'm Mrs. Ballenina, and I'll see you in the next story.